Quite a fair number of the different string functions that are available in PHP make use of regular expressions. Hopefully regular expressions are something that you've dealt with previously in other languages. If not, we'll talk about them just a little bit here. But since regular expressions are sort of their own language, they're not specifically of PHP or any other language for that matter, they're sort of their own thing, I don't want to get too deep here into regular expressions in this video. Hopefully one of the things you already know about regular expressions is that essentially what they are patterns that we can put together. When we write a regular expression pattern, we have the ability to then take that pattern and compare it against a string. Whatever tools are available in the language you're using then should then be able to come back and let you know whether the regular expression pattern you've written match or don't match the string that you have provided. Here, let's take a look at how these can work in PHP. I'm going to add a set of PHP tags here inside the body of this new page that I'm working on, and what I want to actually make use of here in this set of PHP tags is a function called PregMatch. The PregMatch function is one of the most common that you'll use in PHP. Its basic purpose is to simply compare a regular expression pattern against a string. When we use the PregMatch function, what we need to do is provide it with those two things, a regular expression and a string. Regular expressions in PHP are always written as strings themselves, with just inside the quotes being a set of forward slashes. The forward slashes are the way regular expressions are usually denoted in most languages. It's basically the same in PHP, except that the entire thing is also written as a string. So you could say that regular expression patterns in PHP are actually just sort of a special type of string, whereas in some languages regular expressions are considered to be sort of first-class citizens, all on their own separate type of data, separate than strings. But in PHP, a regular expression simply is a string. So that's the first thing we have to provide to PregMatch, is simply whatever we want our regular expression to be. Here I'll create a regular expression of the pattern CAT. The second thing I then need to provide to the PregMatch function is the string that I want to compare this pattern against. Here, if I provide PregMatch with the string cat, or even better, if I instead create a variable that contains that string, then what the PregMatch function will do is it will compare the pattern that I've provided against the string that I've provided. What PregMatch will then return to me is the number of times that the match was found, the number of times that the pattern could be found inside the given string, which usually means it'll return 0 if no match was found at all, and it'll return some positive integer value if there are matches, a match or matches that are actually made. Because what preg gives back is a 0 or some positive integer number, the way I usually end up using PregMatch is as if it returns a Boolean value. Since the value of 0 is falsy, what I can do is just assume that it's going to return false if there's no match and true if it is. So a lot of times I use PregMatch inside an if statement. With an if statement set up like this, PregMatch will trigger true and execute the true part of the if statement. If we actually do make a match with our pattern and string, it'll return a falsy value, so we'll end up down here in the else section if there is no match. So for this example, let me just throw in some messages. I'm just going to put in an echo, a match was found, if there is actually a match, and if there isn't a match, I'll just echo out that there was no match. We'll be able to see that output in the browser and be able to tell whether our regular expression is matching our pattern or not. Let me jump over to the browser now and see what we get. Here in the browser, if I hit refresh, it comes back and it tells me a match was found. Well, that hopefully makes a lot of sense given that our pattern, or that our string was cat and the pattern I was looking for was cat. If I change the string that I was checking and I instead look for dog, and then I go take a look at that in the browser, at that point it tells me that there is no match. So it is actually letting me know whether my string matches my regular expression or not. Now, of course, things with regular expressions are never quite that simple. Regular expressions can be a lot more interesting. If I, for example, instead of having cat or dog as my string, maybe had the word catalog, and then I went and checked to see if that was a match, it tells me that yes, indeed, that is a match, because the letters CAT do occur there inside the string catalog, so there was one match found. Regular expressions go much further, of course, than just being able to match individual characters. They will go and they will let us actually use meta characters, special characters that can be included inside our regular expression. Instead of going through and playing with those meta characters here in this particular way, let me start a new example where we can play with these regular expressions in a little bit more robust of a way. All right, here's what I want to work with. I have this simple little data file. It's entirely made up, so don't really try to make any sense of it. But basically what I have here in this data file is a bunch of imaginary weather readings. Each one of these weather readings has a date that goes along with it, month, day, year. Each one of them has the day of the week that the recording was made. Each of them has the current conditions for that time. And then I have two numbers. And what I was thinking in my head when I made these up were that these numbers were the temperature and the humidity. It doesn't really make all that much difference what they actually are. What I want to do with this data then is I want to see if I can create a page where the user can supply a piece of data to the form, and the form can then, or the script can then come and actually search through this file, returning lines that match. And what I was wanting to do was basically have the search field where the user would type in what they're searching for essentially be a regular expression. So we could provide any regular expression, simple or complex, to our form, and it would then use that regular expression to pull out the lines in this file that actually match. To get me started in that, what I have here is the beginning of a new page I'm calling Weather Matcher. What I want to do here in my Weather Matcher page is I want to set it up so that the user can search that file with it. Down here in the main part of the body, I think I'm going to provide the user with a form that they can use to input a regular expression. I'll start out with my form and I'll have it be self-submitting. I'm going to have it submit using post. I'm going to set the submit button at the bottom to say search. And for the user to actually enter their regular expression, I'm going to give them a input field, a text field. The text field itself I think I'll refer to as pattern, since that's essentially what it is. That's going to be a pattern that the user is going to supply. And I think we are ready to go with that. Let me take a look at that in the browser and see how it looks. There we are. That's what the user will see. They'll have a place where they can submit their pattern, click the search button, and then what I want the script to do is come back and show them all the lines from the weather file that actually match their pattern. To do the actual loading of the data from the file and matching of the pattern, I'm going to put in a new set of PHP tags up at the very top of my page. Inside those PHP tags, I'm just going to take the easiest way I know to be able to pull all the data out of my weather file, and that's to use the file function. For the file function, which we've talked about previously, all I need to do is I need to give it the name of the file that I want to read from, so that's going to be weather.txt. That's going to automatically open and read from my file for me and return all the lines. I'll take all those lines and I'll store them here in a lines variable. So that will handle reading all the data in from the file. Once all the data is read in from the file, the next thing I would want to do is I would want to go and try to find any matches between the pattern and each of those individual lines. Of course, if I don't have a pattern, I can't do that, nor do I really need to read the file if I don't even have a pattern yet. So let me take and put this entire thing inside an if statement that only executes, that's only true if the form has been submitted. So I'm going to say if is set, and what I'm going to look for is that the pattern's been submitted. So in the post array, I would expect to find a value there called pattern. There we are. So if the pattern's been submitted, then I'll go ahead and pull all the lines out of the file. When I pull all the lines out of the file, or after I'm done with that anyway, I can loop through all those individual lines and take each one of them and I'll just call it line. And this is where I would then want to use my PRegMatch function to see if the pattern matches it. What I'm going to do for the actual pattern itself, to make life a little bit easier on the user, is I'm going to automatically put in the 2 slashes that need to be there because it's a regular expression, and then I'm just going to append into the middle of those the actual pattern that they supplied. All right. The second argument that of course then I need for PRegMatch is the actual string itself, which is the line variable that was provided to me by my for each loop. That's essentially the way I'm going to set up PRegMatch, and what I want to know then at that point is whether a line matches or not. I'm going to take this and I'm going to turn it into an if statement. And then inside that if statement, if a line matches, essentially if PRegMatch returns true, I want to take that line and I want to store it away so that I can then show it down in the body. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another variable, another array. I'm going to call it matches. I'll just let it be a good old-fashioned numeric array, and whenever I find a line that actually matches my pattern, I'm going to take that line and I'm going to push it into the array using array push. So I will push into the matches array the line that we found in this loop that we just discovered with our regular expression matches our pattern. So by the time that for each loop is done, hopefully my matches array will have in it a number of different lines from the file that actually match some pattern that the user provided. I could then take that and I could display it down in the body. I think maybe down below my form is where I'll actually put that. Let me scoot that up a little bit to make it easier for you to see. So here below my actual form, I'll put in a set of PHP tags, and in those PHP tags, I'm going to start off with an if statement. I'm going to say if the count of the matches, if it's greater than 0. So if we've actually found some matches, then this is the point where I would then want to actually display them for the user. I think I'm probably going to be getting into some HTML here, so I'm going to switch this over and use the alternate syntax instead. There we are. And then inside this if statement, how about if I take the line that we read from the file and I split it up and display it as part of a table? Maybe I will go ahead and start the table here. I think I'll leave off a header row in the table for right now. That's probably a little bit more than this example actually deserves. Instead, let's just loop through all of our matches here inside the table and display their data. So again, using the alternate syntax to loop through the matches array, I'm going to use a for each loop. In that for each loop, I'm going to go through each one of my individual matches. I'll take each one of them as a match, a specific match. I'll go ahead and end my for each there. And then inside what I want to do is I want to create a new table row. I'm also going to want to go ahead and take that match and I'm going to want to split it up. So let me create a new array. I'm going to call it fields. And to get my fields array, what I'm going to do is I'm going to explode that match. When I explode the match, I'm going to do it using a space as my delimiter, since over in my weather file there's a space between each one of the separate pieces of data. To actually then show each of the individual pieces of data in my table as a cell, I'm going to do another for each loop, taking each one of the aspects of my match as, oh, my mistake, not of each one of my matches, each one of the elements of my fields array, taking each one of them as, maybe I'll just call it data here. And then for each one of them, what I want to do is create a new table cell. And inside that table cell, I'll echo that particular piece of data. So hopefully I'll end up with all the different aspects of that line of weather being displayed out in my table. I think that might be a good start. Let's check it out and see how it's going. I'm going to jump back over to the browser now. If I refresh my browser, I don't see anything too bad happening here at the moment. If I submit a completely blank pattern, there we are. A blank pattern, essentially a blank regular expression, matches everything. So when I did just a blank pattern, it was a blank regular expression that was generated. It matched every line from my file. They all came back and ended up getting displayed for me. What I have at this point isn't anything that's actually realistically terribly useful. Something useful maybe could be based on this idea, but this is more like a little playground that we can use for experimenting with our regular expressions a bit. If I were to try searching for something like the word sunny, then it comes back and it only gives me back the lines that have the word sunny, the pattern sunny, matching in them. Remember, when we're doing these matches, we're doing the matches against the raw lines from the file, not from the split up data that's actually showing in the table. That was just for presentation to make it easier to look at. If I actually go and I look for the word sun, in that case, I end up getting back all the lines that had the word sunny in it, as well as all the Sundays. So there's a few lines in here that aren't sunny, but they both were Sundays, and that's why those particular lines were showing up. You always have to remember, of course, with regular expressions, that what we're searching for is not a word. What we're searching for is a pattern. So don't fall into the trap of thinking if you type sun in as your pattern that you're searching for the word sun. All you're doing is looking for the pattern s followed by u followed by n. Like I said before, I don't want to get too terribly deep into regular expressions here. There's plenty of online resources or books you can read whose purpose is just to teach you regular expressions. They're definitely a subject all on their own worth studying. But just to show you a few of the quick meta characters, just to kind of refresh your memory if you've learned about these in a previous class. Some of my favorite meta characters are things like the circumflex, which is the housetop character, which represents the beginning of the line. So if I search for something like circumflex 10, all I get back from my file is this one line. The reason for that is that the circumflex is the beginning of the line. So when I searched for circumflex 10, that was like saying the beginning of the line followed by a 1 and a 0. This was the only line that actually matched that pattern. Very similar to the circumflex is the $sign. If I were to search for $0, well, I actually didn't end up getting any lines back. What I was hoping to get back were all the lines that ended in a 0. There are lines that ended in a 0, which brings up the question, why didn't those show up? The $sign is supposed to represent the end of the line, so $0 should have meant all the lines that have the pattern 0 followed by a $sign in them, but I didn't actually get any. If I actually look at the code that's generated here, maybe we'll find some clues. Oh, look what's happening here. At the end of the temperature of 100, there's a new line in there. You can't actually see the new line itself, but the fact that that TD is pushed down is a clue that it's actually there. That's happening on all the humidities, it looks like, at the end of every line. Hopefully you understand why that's happening. That's something that we addressed in a previous video. What's actually happened is that when I pull all my data in from my file using the file function, the new lines that are at the end of each one of those lines of text in the weather file are not being trimmed off. Those new lines are still there. Even when I start going through the process of taking that line, breaking it up, and parsing it, exploding it, those new lines are still hanging around there at the end of my data for each one of those different parts. If I'm searching for a 0 at the end of the line, but it's not actually the end of the line, there's a new line character there, then that would explain why that pattern wasn't actually working. Maybe what I should do is I should go back here where I'm actually doing my match, and I should actually trim that data a little bit. I'll trim my line here when I'm actually comparing it in my pattern. I might also go ahead and trim it before I stick it into my array. That'll make sure that that new line character is gone when it's actually displayed. Let me jump back over to the browser and see what happens now. Here I just refreshed my page. If I just list out all of my weather readings and take a look at the code, that TD is not falling down to the next line now. So it looks like I did get rid of the new line character in the data that's being displayed. Hopefully, since I did it the same way for when I was matching the pattern, it's gone there as well. Let's try going back and doing that $sign pattern again. There it is. And when I run it now it's correctly working. $sign is giving me back all the lines where I have 0 followed by the end of the line. So we uncovered a little bug there and we're able to fix it again. All right, what other meta characters do we have available in our regular expressions? Well, how about the period? Anytime we put a period in a regular expression, that period essentially means any character in this position. So if I were to search for period 3, for example, I'm essentially at that point asking for any line where there's a character followed by a 3, which is of course not really all that specific. We could of course though use that period in conjunction with some of our other meta characters. Like for example, what if I searched for circumflex period 2? Circumflex period 2 would mean the beginning of the line, that's the circumflex, followed by a period, followed by the digit 2. So essentially that would be like saying, find for me every weather reading where the second digit of the month is a 2. And sure enough, what I got back were a bunch of December readings. If there had been any February readings in there where the month was put into 02, those would have shown up as well. Because with the period, we were saying the character before the 2 could be anything. We don't really care what it is. So the period's nice when we have a character we don't care about at all. The square braces can be handy as a meta character when there's a situation where we don't want to specify a character, but anything doesn't necessarily go. For example, what if I said circumflex, period, and then I said 1 or 2, right? 1 or 2 inside the square braces. That would mean that I'm looking for the beginning of the line followed by any character. Doesn't matter. And then after that, I'm saying for the second character of the line, all I will allow there is a 1 or a 2. So in that case, I end up getting back all the Novembers and Decembers. If there was a October in there where the second digit was a 0, that would not have matched my pattern because the square braces specified that only a 1 or a 2 was allowed. When we do those square braces, which are called character classes, by the way, we can list out individual characters, numeric or alphabetic. We can also put in ranges, so doing things like 0 through 9, A through Z. Right? They are capitals, and they are case specific, so A through Z capitals. Things like that are all perfectly allowed and completely normal. They're so perfectly normal and allowed that there's even some shortcuts that can be used for doing those types of things. Inside the square braces, I can actually put in a second set of square braces and a set of colons. And inside the colons, then, there's then a number of different keywords that I can use, like alnum, for example, which would be essentially the equivalent of what I had typed there a second ago, where I was allowing any uppercase or lowercase letter or any digit. Alnum would give me the same thing. That's just a slightly more concise way of being able to write it. There's a lot of different shortcuts along those lines. Certainly my favorite is punct, P-U-N-C-T. What that does is that provides you with all of the punctuation characters. If I forget one of these shortcuts like alnum or alpha or something along those lines, it doesn't bother me that much if I have to type A through Z or 0 through 9. But boy, I don't like having to try to type out every single punctuation mark when that's what I'm trying to match in a pattern. So I really like this punct shortcut quite a bit. Besides these square braces, there's lots of other meta characters that can potentially be used as well. Again, I would encourage you to go look them up and read about them in a more specialized source. Make sure you read about the asterisk, about the plus sign, about the curly braces. Make sure you read about the question mark. Those are all the repetition meta characters. And there's probably a good deal more beyond that. Those are the ones that come to the top of my head. One way or another, suffice it to say that PHP has rather full, rather complete, well-working support for regular expressions built into it, and regular expressions can be immensely useful. They're something that we can actually use pretty often, can really get a lot of good work done for us in a fairly easy way. Regular expressions themselves, of course, are not all that easy. They are a subject unto themselves and take quite a bit of learning and patience to be able to get good at them. They're about the most cryptic looking little bit of programming that I think I've ever seen in my entire life. But nevertheless, you can, of course, build up into them, start up fairly short and simple, and then gradually get more and more complex with the types of regular expressions that you understand and are using regularly in your code. And PHP, of course, will be there allowing you to make use of them. So they're a wonderful tool, and good luck with those.